Hi everyone, welcome to another How I Made This. This animation was made entirely in Blender Grease Pencil, and I learned a couple of new things that have changed my process completely. As usual, this was meant to be a quick demo of a technique I wanted to show in my How to Animate series on YouTube, but it very quickly ended up being a lot more detailed. So this animation started out with a doodle using the Mirror Modifier during a live stream. I love doing this, it's such a fun and relaxed way for me to sketch out character designs, and I would highly recommend it if you want a warm-up or you're stuck for ideas. It's very easy to make progress quickly, and you can even apply this to background design if you like. Normally animating detail like this is much more labour intensive than I like to do, but with the Mirror Modifier it made certain movements a lot easier. With the modifier active, I animated the movement in the arms and hands. Looking back, I would probably add another layer just for the hands, so I could put in a bit more detail and move the layer around without it affecting the rest of the sketch. If you're going to use the Mirror Modifier and animate like this, I definitely recommend picking a side to work on, because if you want to move or erase a section, it will only be possible from the drawn side. I tend to switch between tasks quite a lot as I'm working, so this was a tough one for me. You can always hide a modifier from the real-time view in the settings and the final render. Just make sure they're back on when you're ready to check how it looks, or export the final thing. If you only want the modifier to affect a certain layer, you can choose which one in the Influence tab. However, unless you want it to affect the whole grease pencil, in which case you don't have a layer selected in the Influence tab, you'll need multiple modifiers if you want them to affect multiple individual layers. What I didn't realise at this point, which would have probably reduced the project time by a third, was the ability to apply modifiers. I spent the entire project with active modifiers, which made lining and colouring this incredibly difficult. So when you're done with a modifier, apply it. To animate the hat and extra details, I added a new grease pencil and sketched over the top so I could use edit mode and sculpt mode to change the position by hand. I wanted the movement to start slow, the brim of the hat looking like it was caught in a breeze, before it would lift off the head and out of the camera view for a few seconds. Then it would fall and cover the head, knocking the wizard out of his trance. I then started adding some animation to the edge of their cape, creating some ripples that I turned into a loop. I was quite worried about this section because I hadn't planned on animating it. There was a lot of detail and I would have had to adjust the pattern and make sure it didn't look jittery later. But it didn't look right staying static when everything else was moving. As this character was a wizard, I wanted to add in some magic, which I did on a new grease pencil object. I made new layers for each circle or spark I wanted to add. At this point I'm using the color attribute mode, but now I'm more comfortable with Blender, I've started using materials a lot more, as although you need to create a new material for each color, the option to change them later is very nice. Next, it was time to tackle the pattern. I made a new layer, sketched over the design and used the sculpt tool to push and pull the design in the direction I wanted. I didn't have a reference for the way the cape moved, so it was all from my imagination, which worked pretty well. What helped to keep things consistent was starting at the sketch and then moving the cursor until it reached the red animated line. When I played the animation through, it looked a lot better than I thought it would be and only needed a couple of minor adjustments. The charm attached to the top of the hat was more detailed than I was willing to redraw by hand, so I mostly stuck to edit mode to select, move and rotate the areas I needed in the direction I thought it would swing. As it was attached to the hat, its motion would react to that. Finally, it was time to line the animation and I started with the hair, which I separated out into different sections, so I could create variation in the movement and offset the timing. It would look very unnatural if they all moved in the same direction with the same timing, so this made it much easier. The sculpt tool, as always, was a big help in making small adjustments while keeping the overall shape consistent. Next was the hat charm and cape with detail, which went pretty smoothly as I had the roughs to guide me, and then used the exact same edit and sculpt modes to recreate the placement, but in a much neater way. I tried some different styles for the hands, but went with the 3-finger design that I like to use from Adventure Time. I chose to use yellow, blue and red for the colour palette, which I kept limited, not only to make my life easier when colouring, but to help draw the eye around the image. The red eyes and hair were the same as the sleeves, the yellow on the cape matched the hat charm, and the blue linked the hat and cape pattern together. If I'm really stuck for combinations, I like to use the website Colors to generate palettes for me. Colouring was done with the fill tool and draw tool with a fill material. There were a lot of layers in this that overlapped, which meant more colour layers. I had the most trouble with the hat, mainly because areas needed to appear behind the head and the layers I needed to colour were affected by the modifiers, which should have been applied, but I didn't realise it could be applied until after I'd finished. Eventually the character animation was complete, so I added a dark background that would fade in by creating opacity keyframes in the layer panel. Then for the magic, I added a glow effect and some extra shapes that would also fade in, out, and float around. Overall, I was super pleased with this one and how it looks. If you want to see more videos like this or learn how to animate with easy beginner exercises, take a look at this.